We're recording. There we go. So this is title of the chapter was The Illusions of the Ego. Why is it necessary that we look at the illusions of the ego? Many spiritual systems would not be concerned with that. They want to look at the light and the love and the spirituality. Well, because the illusions of the ego form the thought system of the ego, and to the extent that we've been practicing those things, it's necessary that we see them for what they are. Only then can you make a choice of whether or not you want to continue with that thought system or change your mind. So it's necessary for healing to see and understand these illusions so that you can choose again. So with that, we're going to do these in sequence, starting with section 1, right teaching and right learning. And David, we'll just do it a few lines at a time.
Everyone is learning and teaching what they have learned by projecting beliefs outward onto others and the world. This learning can be based on love or fear. Fear inhibits the learning process, where ego judges your self-image as unworthy and unlovable. Right teaching helps students recognize their true nature, which is inherently loving and free from fear.
So, couple terms we want to understand when we talk about teaching and learning here. Everyone's teaching and teaching all the time, that meaning that which you believe in your mind, you then project that outward into your relationships with other people and into life. So we are not limiting ourselves to the classic sense of a teacher and a learning. We are all teachers and learning. Question really becomes is whether or not what we are teaching is based on love or fear. And so we'll make a distinction between right learning, learning based on love, and learning based on fear. And this distinction is necessary for you to be able to recognize. If you are unable to distinguish right learning from fear-based learning, then you can't make a choice because it's all jumbled together. We need to distinguish them from each other in order to be able to make clear choices. And one final thing that will come up again and again is when we have learned from fear, fear inhibits the learning process. How does it inhibit it? Because the ego has an image of you, which it discounts it discounts your being and is highly critical of you. And that criticism, that judgment of you formulates an image of you which gets in the way of love. And so in order to heal, we need to see the image that the ego has of us and then gladly let it go. Not battle it, not fight it, but relinquish it. I'm just going to keep going on until somebody raises their hands and makes a comment. David?
Effective communication between the teacher and student is essential for right learning. Teachers must understand and acknowledge the student's current perception in order to facilitate growth.
So, Kathy, I could not help but think of comments you have made in the past when reading this, when you try to explain to someone how the healing process works are about miracles. You've often shared that in the group, so this is not a secret. And what it says here is that it's essential that the teachers understand and acknowledge the student's perception. And so all the more reason why we need to understand the ego's illusions, so that when we're trying to help someone else, we realize they're wrapped in a thought system that is illusory. And I understand it because I've been there myself. And so that becomes essential for us to be able to effectively communicate our understanding to others. We're not communicating at the level that our mind is perceiving, but we communicate with an understanding of where the listener is at. If we are to facilitate growth, and of course that's the purpose of teaching and learning, is to facilitate growth. We'll go on.
The readiness of both the teacher and the student is crucial in the process of right teaching and right learning. If you are willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system, Spirit will correct it very gently and lead you back to God.
The operative word here is your readiness. As you learn to practice miracles, having your mind in a right-minded state to be ready. Workbook lessons are an excellent way to begin your day. And with the lesson 93 today, it said 5 minutes every hour would be helpful. To keep your mind ready and attuned to your function to be helpful and harmless. And so there's you ready as a miracle worker, but also the readiness of the student is crucial. And this has come up a number of times. Well, how do you convince somebody that needs healing to be, well, they have to be ready. You can't force healing on somebody. They have to be ready themselves. It's crucial for them to learn is their willingness to be ready to learn. And so central to all of this is your willingness. This takes great humility to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system. Think how profound this is. All our lives, we've had control over what thoughts we choose to believe in and what we value and treasure. And now it's being suggested that we renounce our role as guardian and let Spirit guide us in that process, gently lead us back. All right, let's take some comments. Susie?
I just want to go back to the second paragraph because I think it's so important. I've done it and I hear it a lot. If, when we talk about another person and maybe what they've done in this world or what they're thinking or that they're asleep, or I don't know what words, exactly to use, but that is their current perception in this moment. And I can remember, so I have to really be cognizant of where the other person is, right? And not like just force my opinions or judgments or, what I've learned. But this takes me back to the very beginning, Jonica, when I started studying with you. And, I didn't know anything. And I remember asking all kinds of questions, and you were very patient and understood where I was at that time, which helped facilitate growth for me. Like I remember, I was a real, not that I'm not a beginner every day, but I really was a beginner. And I just think that that's just really important, to acknowledge where that person is. And I think it's also, it helps me to understand maybe that person's point of view. That's just where they are right now. That's it. It's just their perception. Like my perception was so different even 6 months ago. So I don't know. I just wanted to go back to it because I think it's really important. And it has a lot to do with us judging or not judging, is
Right.
what you're saying.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Noel?
I think also, I've had the experience where sometimes I've said too much too soon, too early, and overwhelm the person and engender skepticism too, because it's like too much. I want to sort of show off, But so that's, for me, then it's very important to gauge, as you say, Susie, where they are. And I can only do that by listening to them, I think, and just being quiet, listening to what their concerns, problems, fears are, and then listen myself. I want to go also to the last sentence, renounce the role of guardian of your thought system. Does that presume that my thought system is wrong, ego-driven?
I think if we interpret this, Noel, in terms of your thought system, the one that you've decided is the basis for guidance and truth, yes, we would say, none of us are capable by ourselves separately of formulating a thought system based on truth. And so, yes, it does assume that this was the one that we formed all by ourselves.
Right.
And then believed that to be an accurate way of guiding our life. This is classic ego guidance. And
If we're being a teacher, though, aren't we assumed that we're listening to the Holy Spirit in the teacher-student relationship?
we'd like to make that assumption.
Oh,
Yes. But these things have to be practiced on a moment by moment basis. And it's very easy to become self-reliant when in that role. So this is actually not in the notes here, but when you're with someone and you're helping to guide them, there is always an impulse to guide them as you think you should. And there's also an impulse coming from spirit, as spirit would operate through you. On the one, as you think you should guide, you're in control of that thought system. And that one is well known to your mind. Matter of fact, you can rely on your memory to guide that communication. Whereas spirit guidance is faith-based and is often cannot be anticipated what you will say in the next few minutes, because it emerges in the very moment according to the need. And so it feels many times like walking a tightrope in the sense that one needs to stay in balance. One can't relax and just forget and just start, babbling away or saying whatever comes to your mind. But one really ought to be in a prayerful state where you're minded of spirit at all times. And so that is what we call an art more than a science. As a matter of fact, I have maintained you can be entirely correct as to the theory, but not in line with spirit guidance at the same time. And if you want an example of that, you can notice how I slip in and out of moments where I'm just babbling.
So it's also a matter of big trust and kind of jumping off the bridge and knowing there's a boat under there to catch you.
Yeah, it is a faith journey, yes, where each step appears as you're taking it. Indeed. David?
Is this not the same as saying, what would you have me say and to whom?
It is. It is. It's part of the beauty. So David's referring to workbook lesson 71, I think. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? And that prayer seems to have universal applicability. It's written in a format that can be applied to almost any situation. And that is that I don't know what I'm going to say. When we're spirit guided, we're not just repeating things that we've already made up our mind are true. We're actually in a state of prayer. What would spirit have me say? And when and how? It is more of an art. Richard?
Hi, guys. I am confused. I'm going through some stuff. I'm doing some inner work. And I'm happy you guys are here, class. I just get confused when in the course, like in the introduction to chapter 4, starts talking about the Bible or quoting that. Now that takes me in another direction to my old religion, and which I've turned my back on. And when I hear other quotes, even with maybe I don't believe in the Bible, maybe I believe in something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to debate. I'm here to confuse myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then these are things that have been going on along the way, and I don't want to drop out of this group.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stay. But I feel like the last 2 sessions that I was with you guys, that maybe I felt like brand new and
Oh, yeah.
not feeling
Mm-hmm.
that I was in sync with you guys.
So I'd love, thank you, Richard. I'd love to address that. One, I always feel like I'm brand new. I'm amazed at how every year I go in the course, I feel like I'm back at the beginning, like everything that I had acquired through previous years no longer means anything. Like I'm only really alive when I'm learning in the present, not when I'm operating upon past vapors. So, so that is a common experience for me, is to feel like I'm brand new. And I've learned to embrace that. Think of it as you're being born each day anew, and that's a gift. That's actually a gift versus thinking you're old and experienced.
Right.
And 2, regarding the Bible, there's nowhere that I see in the course that requires anyone believe in the Bible. there are 2 billion people that profess to be Christians in the world. So it is a text that many people have used in their understanding. But most of the times when it's referred to in A Course in Miracles, it's for the purposes of correcting the way people understand it. Let me say it another way. People have understood certain statements in the Bible to mean vengeance is mine and the fear of the Lord type statements. And the Course of Miracles says really anyone that believes in that is mistaken, and we should not base our experience on that. So I don't find that it requires belief in the Bible, but it will refer to it as a text for which many people are familiar with.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, I don't feel like I'm in control.
Good. Well, that's exactly what that. Okay, I'm glad you feel that way, because if you felt like you were in control, something's not working here. This is surrender, but no one's taking control from you, because that would be too harsh. This is a program of inviting you to let go of control, so that it's done at your pace. And when you're ready, the time you choose to do these things is up to you. It's not forced upon you.
Yeah, this is like identity theft.
Yes. Or this is definitely a change in identity. Yes. But it's only done at your willingness to let go each step of the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Noelle, did you have an additional comment?
Yes. Richard, I want to say that for me also, as many times as I've done the workbook, it's always new. I always feel there's a tremendous amount to learn. I forget, it just goes out of my head. So you're not alone at all. I also want to address something that last time, Jonica, you pointed out on page 24 of the text, that big prayer, that wonderful prayer.
Yeah.
Third line, this is also related to what David was saying a moment ago.
Right.
I do not have to worry about what to say
Thank
or
you.
what to do, because he who sent me will direct me.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, that is the spirit of it. All right. We have one more line from this section here.
A true teacher-student relationship is founded on equality and mutual respect. Both the teacher and student learn from each other and grow together in a shared experience, with the teacher guiding the student towards the recognition of their own inner truth.
Mm-hmm. So in the classic teacher relationship, like school teacher, the teacher has all the knowledge and the students don't have any, and the teacher teaches the students, right? That's a one-way teaching process. In A Course in Miracles, both teacher and learner are on the same level. We are all teaching and learning, and therefore learning from one another. And so if a teacher of miracles whose goal is to teach peace recognizes how peace is experienced by a student, then the teacher is also learning at the same time. It's a reciprocal relationship, not a one-way I benefit, the student benefits, but the teacher loses. Said in other words, in other places, giving and receiving are one in truth. A truth that is shared is multiplied manyfold. Everyone gains. It's one of the reasons why these experiences that we have in group learning can be so fulfilling, is because a truth shared is multiplied manyfold. Many people now benefit from that. And so there's no taking away. But there's definitely a giving and receiving, a reciprocal relationship. Okay, because we're in review format, we need to move on. These are some of the ideas from section 2, the ego and false autonomy. Remember, just a brief introduction, the ego wants you to think of yourself as autonomous, as an independent agent without any connections to anything else, but being completely free and independent. That's the ego's thought system. Let's go into some of the lines there.
The ego is an illusionary construct that creates a sense of individuality and autonomy. It thrives on fear, conflict, and the belief in scarcity, promoting a mindset of competition and comparison, which in turn perpetuates suffering and disconnection.
Mhm. I want to focus here on the idea of competition and comparison, because my experience growing up in the United States is competition was all around, competitive in sports, competitive in academics, competitive in the business world. It was kind of a thread, and it forced people to want to be better. And this then becomes part of a mindset of competing. But what are you competing with? You're competing with other people. And that then, the ego then and I'm not saying that those examples that I cited are bad, but the ego then weaponizes it so that we wind up thinking it normal to compete with people and to compare them with each other. This is the opposite of the idea of perfect equality and all children being equally lovable, all children, all people being equally lovable. So beware of how competitions and comparison can become weaponized in the ego's mindset. Susie?
So I just want to share something really honest, but was probably one of the most helpful things for me to recognize and notice, that as probably many of us, I was brought up with complete perfectionism and, the need to please my parents and be perfect and great and all of that stuff. And I started recognizing some of my thoughts, that like, if I hit a good shot in golf, my default thought would be, oh, I can't wait for Vicky to see that, to see how great that is. And I'm being really honest now, and it was amazing for me to recognize how weaponizing and destroying that thought was for me. It perpetuated my ego's need to be perfect and great and to be recognized. And so I started asking the Holy Spirit, like, I don't even want to have those thoughts. I don't even want that to enter into my thinking. And I was really willing. And every time I would have that thought, I would offer that up to the Holy Spirit and say, this is not a joining thought. This is keeping me separate. It's keeping me bound. There's no freedom in that. And I just would do it over and over and over again every time I had those kinds of thoughts. And it was really freeing for me. And those were like those hidden secrets that we're going to start to talk about, right?
Yes.
Those were those hidden thoughts that I tried to keep from the Holy Spirit, but I couldn't keep them anymore. And I feel so much freer, and I'm very, very cognizant of this competition and comparison, and it really perpetuated suffering for me and disconnection. So I just wanted to share that, because the only way that I could recognize that, but I couldn't fix my broken mind with my broken mind. I had to offer it all up to the Holy Spirit for help.
Yes.
So this really speaks to me, and it speaks to the mindset of the ego.
It does. Thank you, Susie. Thank you for your transparency there. So true for so many of us. David?
False autonomy is the idea that we are independent and self-sufficient, which reinforces the belief in separation. This notion leads to feelings of isolation, loneliness, and a constant search for external validation and approval.
I want to focus on this last phrase, a constant search for external validation and approval. And it comes back, ties to the mindset of comparisons and competition. I remember when many years ago, bought an Acura Legend, and it was a first luxury car I had ever owned, and how I felt like a better person now that I'm in this luxury car. And it's almost like I wanted to be seen by others in this luxury car. It was a search for external validation and approval. And so that's just one form. This can take many other forms as well. And so just realize this is not evil or sinful. It is a symptom of the mindset that the ego has. It fills in the sense of emptiness that is a constant thread in the ego's mindset. Since the ego feels inwardly dry and empty, it must search for something outward to try to fulfill that. And as Susie said in her sharing, these mindsets can remain unconscious for long periods of time. But when you come into this program, these things start to be exposed, and the light of the Holy Spirit starts to illuminate these things. They won't stay hidden for very long. This is all these are simply symptoms. In and of themselves, they mean nothing, but the symptom of the mindset that the ego has constructed, that's what needs healing. Let's go on.
The ego's thought system is inherently unstable, as it is based on the illusion of separation, which it attempts to make real by projecting guilt onto others, fostering a cycle of blame, judgment, and attack, which strengthens the ego's hold on our minds.
Mhm. So this is something that I want to bring your attention to. There's a dichotomy here. The ego's mindset is unstable, whereas spirit's mindset is balanced and stable and consistent. And you can learn to detect how you're doing if you pay attention to this attribute. An unstable mind flips and flops and is chaotic and goes in so many different directions, sometimes within a 10-minute period. It's highly unreliable because it's not solidly, the ego's mindset is not rooted in anything solid. And so it's always seeking for some way of altering the mood because it's not at peace, it's discontent. Pay attention to that. Whereas as you practice your lessons and you learn to be quiet and still and at peace, there is a constancy, a contentment. I think of it as a balance. Instead of moving across extremes of feelings, it's more a persistent calmness. And so pay attention to how you feel. This is one of the best indicators. This is the fastest indicator that you have of who is guiding your thoughts in that moment. David?
By acknowledging the ego's illusions and choosing to align ourselves with the Holy Spirit's guidance, which corrects our misperceptions and leads us towards forgiveness, healing, and the recognition of our true interconnected nature.
I don't know if that's a well-written sentence.
I had trouble with it.
Yeah. But you get the idea. I want to focus here on acknowledging the ego's illusions. This core, if you're feeling, when you notice ego thoughts arise in your mind, this course is not here to make you feel guilty about having ego mindset arise in your consciousness. The intent is to acknowledge, oh, there goes an ego thought, and then completely withdraw any feelings and emotion and thoughts from it, dismiss it as worthless, meaningless. So acknowledge the ego's illusions and immediately choose again to be guided by the Holy Spirit. That's how we step out of the grip of the ego, is to see it, acknowledge it, and immediately move on, not stay there, berate ourselves, feel guilty, analyze it, or come up with a whole big narrative around how all that happened. That's just dancing in your prison cell. Step out of the prison cell and choose to align yourself with the Holy Spirit's guidance, which will correct your the Holy Spirit has the correction for you in that specific moment, in that specific situation that you're in. She holds the light, but you have to willingly choose to invite her guidance into your mind. This is what brings forgiveness and healing. So one more thing. For years, I was in the habit of recognizing my ego thought and just labeling ego thought, ego thought, ego thought, without doing the second part is choosing to align myself with the Holy Spirit's guidance. For in other words, I was just judging myself constantly. There's an ego thought, there's an ego thought, there's an ego thought. This does not bring healing, folks. This is essentially a form of practicing judgment. So always we need to pair the recognition of an ego thought with a choice for healing by a choice for the Holy Spirit. And really, there's really a third phase to that. There's a recognition of the ego thought. There's a choice for the Holy Spirit. And the third thing is the experience of uniting with the mind of the Holy Spirit. This should not be treated lightly or thought lightly of. You can intellectually, every time you have an ego thought, say, there's an ego thought, I choose the Holy Spirit. That's not healing. You're just using a mantra there. What heals is where you go into your depths of your soul and unite with the Holy Spirit. This then is the way we change our mind. It changes our misperception and leads us towards forgiveness and healing and our true interconnected nature. It's an experience of not only verbally or in your mind saying, Holy Spirit, I welcome your guidance, but then truly allowing that to sink in. So that's all I was going to say about that section. Then we're going to move on to some ideas from section 3, Love Without Conflict.
The ego is the primary source of conflict in our lives. This false self that we constructed through our identification with the material world has adapted to the world and thrives on separation and fear. Ego is ambivalent towards even love.
So remember when we said the ego was unstable? Well, it's constantly in conflict. It can't rest. It can't find peace. It lives in conflict. And this is why you cannot battle your ego and win. Its game is one of conflict. It wants you to fight with it. And so what we can do is merely walk away from the ego, but not duke it out. Susie's metaphor is not jump into the boxing ring with it. David?
Fear is an obstacle, a barrier to experiencing and expressing love. Fear perpetuates the illusion of separation and fosters feelings of unworthiness and guilt. This inhibits our ability to connect with our true nature and with others.
So I'm thinking in the beginning, in the introduction of the course, it says this course is not intended to teach you love, for that is beyond what can be taught. This course is intended to remove the barriers to the awareness of love's presence. Well, barriers, fear is an obstacle, a barrier to experiencing and expressing love. And fear is so widespread in the human psyche, the human condition. And so it is something that we need to learn to recognize fears in our own mind. And particularly, we need to recognize that fear can only exist in your mind because your mind gives host to it. So said another way, a thought arises that might be anxious or fearful, and your mind grabs onto it and continues to dwell and nurture that idea. That's the essence of the fearful mind. We need to learn not to grab on to fear, but instead to see it as what it is, and learn instead to make a different choice. And what we will learn is that you cannot really progress in this course by hating fear. Like fear's the bad guy, fear's the enemy. It's you really can't master miracles by hatred of fear. You can, however, learn to fall in love with love, the mastery of love. You are attracted to the light more than being repelled by the dark. And so this is very good for your being, by the way, because love will nurture your heart and your soul. You want to allow the love in. You want to have a relationship with the love and not be propelled by the dark. I have one more comment to say on this, because this came up the other day about pain is the great motivator. Was spoken about, and I finally got clear on this. When people reach a great deal of pain, what they realize is they cannot continue in the direction that they've gone because the pain is too great. But that does not tell you what direction to go in instead. It just tells you to stop going in that direction. Instead, the course would teach you that love is the great motivator because it provides you with the direction for your soul, for your healing, and for your transformation. We need to learn to become masters of love because it's directional in its motivation. So let's take some comments. David?
So I have a question. You talked about a fearful thought comes up. All right. So let's say some kind of fearful thought comes up, some kind of fear, unworthiness, guilt, separation, fear, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I observe it
Mm-hmm.
and let it pass through without reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, is that spiritual bypass or is that a letting go?
I would say that is closer to what I was seeing, referring to, where the fear comes up and somehow I don't embrace it. But David, what you didn't say is you immediately then turn to your higher power, to your spirit, and ask for help to replace the fear. So is that a spiritual bypass? No, I don't think so. I think that is more of the first thing of acknowledging the fear. That's a fearful thought. I'm aware that I don't want to embrace it, but that will not heal because we have not invited the light.
You have identified a significant deficiency in my spiritual activity and in my utilization of the course, which is I have a tendency to observe it and let it go by without acting in anything, and manifesting any part of it. But what I'm remiss in is that I don't then ask the Holy Spirit for replacement with love, and I'm very fortunate because Susie has pointed this out to me many times, and it's glaringly apparent in just thinking about it right now. And it's like, I have to say that I just don't have the habit
Mhm.
of doing that,
Mhm.
and it's something that I really need to work on. So I'm glad we brought this up tonight.
Yeah. I am too, David. Chapter 2, a very small section, Special Principles of Miracle Workers, says that forgiveness without correction is merely a type of judgment. We need, in other words, to recognize the fear is there and let it pass without correcting our mind is merely to just become really good at recognizing fear. Correction is to unite your mind with the mind of the Holy Spirit and let that perception replace the fear. That this is, and you said, David, it's major, correct? It is for me as well, and I think it is for everybody, that we do these things without realizing that we need to complement the recognition of our illusions with the invitation of the Holy Spirit. Thank you for pointing that out. Noel?
I understand not hating fear because that makes it bigger and what we concentrate on grows. What about thanking the fear because it's pointing you in the direction of love? Is that making it an entity more also?
I think there's many versions around, now that the fear is in our mind, how do we play with it? Let's have a game, not get all caught up in it. I think it's best to put one's all attention to the invitation of the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, it is possible to convince yourself that you're very clever in manipulating this fear. It's really just looking in the direction of the dark. Let's use the word darkness instead of fear. So as long as our mind is attending to the darkness, we still have a directional change to go. And so the Course teaches me to immediately change direction, invite the Holy Spirit the minute you recognize the fear. I used to spend a lot of time in analyzing how the fear came about. Oh, well, that fear goes all the way back to my childhood. I learned these things when I was young and blah, 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 blah. And now I have a nice story going, but I still haven't invited spirit to replace it. So we want to not do that cleverness and move into correction and healing. Susie?
So after David shared, it's not really what I wanted to share, but the lesson for me is let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. That just really started coming into my mind when David said that, because, the problem for me for fear is it's just separation. And then the next lesson is let me recognize my problems have been solved. But if I don't recognize my problem so it can be solved, those are the two lessons that came to my mind when David was sharing.
That's a good tie. They are speaking to that very issue. It's a twofold process: recognition and then solving the problem that's already been solved.
So, but what I wanted to say also was that with this, with that whole pain is the great motivator thing, it says, I think in the Course, I think we've talked about this, is that pain can be therapeutic. That's what it says, I
Fear.
believe, in the text.
Yeah, fear can be.
Fear
yeah.
fear can be therapeutic.
Yeah,
Pain, fear, whatever, it can be therapeutic.
Yes. And let me just spend a moment on that. The recognition of fear in your mind can lead you to healing if you don't continue to dwell on the fear, but you recognize, gosh, I'm having fearful thoughts right now, and then immediately go into therapy mode.
Right.
Yes. And so we need to learn how to do these things. Yeah, I'm really glad we're having this because this is a vital. You must pair the recognition with the invitation to Spirit and the joining with Holy Spirit's mind.
And I just want to say, you know, I can talk to myself as much as I till I'm blue in the face. I shouldn't have this fear. I shouldn't have this fear. I can intellectualize it. It comes from this. But unless I invite the Holy Spirit in to help me, and it really is just remove the blocks to love's presence, because then I don't have any fear. I can't fix myself. I tried it for many, many years until I got here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Susie. Joy?
Thank you. Yeah, Susie basically just said what I was thinking, which is that I wanted to thank you for reminding me about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, because when I'm having a fearful thought or I'm not at peace, just recognizing it is step one. Recognizing that, well, if I'm not in peace, I'm not in a loving place, then I must be in a fearful place. And so it is so important to remember, you know, I also had this thought about from the 12 steps, you know, running on self will run riot, something like that. And it's just so helpful to remember, okay, if I'm not at peace, then I've chosen to listen to the ego. And the way out is first to recognize it and then to ask Holy Spirit to come in and correct my thinking so that those blocks to the awareness of love's presence are removed. And then once those blocks are removed, I'm just in that natural state of peace. And this tonight is just an awesome class. I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. We probably won't get all the material done today, so I'm going to let David read the rest of this section at once.
Love is the essence of our true nature, of our being. Recognizing this truth is essential to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. Love is beyond perception and offers you the knowledge of permanence and unshakable being. It is an eternal and unchanging force that is not subject to the fluctuations of time, space, or circumstances. Forgiveness is a means to love, the key to dissolving conflict and removing the barriers to love. By practicing forgiveness, we can experience love without conflict.
So this is really essential. The fact that love is a spiritual thing is not news to anybody that's practiced spiritual practice of almost any kind. I mean, that's not a shock here. But what the Course is very strong in is that forgiveness is the means or the method, the path to love. Why? Because we need to dissolve conflict within. these things that the ego has fostered, this inner holy warfare, as I call it, needs to be dissolved so that you can remove the barriers to love. And because you can't, the Course says you can't be in conflict and in love at the same time. The two cancel one another. And the truth is that you were created by your spiritual being, your eternal being was created by an act of love. And that therefore you are the essence of love. Your true nature is the essence of love. And so herein we have the essential issue. Our true nature is love, but our minds have become hijacked by an ego thought system based in fear. And that's a split mind concept, the true nature of love and a mindset that's based in fear that produces inner conflict. And this Course shares a program of forgiveness as a means of walking away from the ego's mindset of fear. It is fundamental. As a matter of fact, for years, if I'm minded to just teach the first 6 chapters of A Course in Miracles, because that would free so many people if they could solidly master the freedom from fear. And like David just said, learning not only to recognize the fear and let it pass, but then what to do to invite spirit so that you have a replacement thought. To master those things are so fundamental. You can probably tell I'm really passionate around that idea. We're not in a hurry here, and it really doesn't matter if we finish. The important thing is that along the journey that we understand and find this to be fruitful. So section 4, this need not be. I'll point out to you in this image of the bird flying away from the cage, where was the bird a few seconds before? The bird was in the cage. How long had the bird been in the cage? The door is open now. How long had the bird sat in that cage with the ability to get out and escape, but it didn't know any better, and it just acquiesced passively to sitting in a cage? And there's a metaphor here for us of how long will we allow our minds to remain in conflict and unstable with the ego mindset when the door is open. The path of forgiveness is in front of us, but we remain in our cage. David?
Suffering and fear are not necessary nor inevitable. They are the products of the ego. The ego thrives on separation, conflict, and illusions. Your attitudes, your feelings, and your behavior demonstrate efforts to keep the ego intact. Watch your mind carefully for ego beliefs and learn to disengage yourself by being vigilant against its demands. Judge how well you have done this by your own feelings, for this is the one right use of judgment. Let ego be judged truly, and you must withdraw your allegiance from it.
So there's a couple things here that are easier to say than to do. Might require, for many of us, years of practice. but it does come, I can tell you, it does come with, one is learning to watch your mind carefully for those ego beliefs arising so that you catch it. Susie spoke about this, David spoke about it, learning to notice, oh my goodness, those are really fearful, anxious thoughts or grievances. You got to watch, pay attention to what's arising in your mind. That's where it begins. The part that I found then I had to learn is to disengage my attention from those thoughts. Being someone who has a tendency towards obsessive compulsive thinking, it was very easy for me once the thought arose to just lock onto it and party with those thoughts for a while, all to my own detriment. To learn to disengage, David referred to it as just allowing it to pass through you. Learn to be vigilant against the demands of this ego. And all right, so we said that's the first half. We're focusing on the first half, and then we know also that there's a second half. You can judge how well you've done this by how you feel. And there is one right use of judgment where you're not using it as a weapon, but you're using it for your own therapeutic value, is to judge how you feel and let the ego be judged truly. I do not want those thoughts in my mind. It's the one right use of judgment. Your feelings will tell you, they're very fast. Feelings respond at the speed of light. Fight or flight syndrome. Instantly, every cell, they know this now physiologically, that like if a balloon pops in the room, the adrenaline that is triggered in your body goes to parts of your muscles instantly. So you pay attention to your feelings. They will help you to recognize, and what we need to learn is that those anxious, fearful feelings are not normal. That we were not created to be in a state of fright. And so your judgment is effective here. Let's go on.
We have the power to choose a different experience by turning to the Holy Spirit for guidance instead of relying on ego. Embracing Holy Spirit guidance is easily made if you actively refuse to let your mind slip away. The problem is not concentration. It is the belief no one is worth the consistent effort.
So I would like these lines to be the central theme for our time together here tonight, the ones we're just reading. Okay, so if there's nothing else, let's hone in on this. So we talked about the first phase is pay attention to how you feel. The ego's mindset has arisen in your mind, and I don't like the way that feels. The second phase, which is vital for your therapy, for your correction, is exercising your power to choose. It's an active, it's more than just a mantra saying, oh, Holy Spirit, I choose the Holy Spirit. It's an assertion of your will that I'm making a decision that I prefer light rather than to stay in the dark. And so we refer to this as a different experience by turning to the Holy Spirit for guidance. It is an experience where you can superficially just say the words, but the healing occurs by you having the experience of welcoming the Holy Spirit's mind into your mind instead of relying on ego, think of it as you're embracing the safety and the trust. You're placing your faith in the Holy Spirit rather than those thoughts that the ego had suggested. And so this seems like it would take a miracle to do that. And the author makes a profound statement that this embracing the Holy Spirit is easily made if you are vigilant to not let your mind drift into the darkness, to drift into grievances and judgments and anger and anxiety. Your part is to actively refuse to remain with those thoughts. And so embracing the Holy Spirit is easy, and this is very deep. I've thought about this so much. The problem is not concentration. The problem is that the ego has taught you you're not worth the effort. And so don't bother. That's the problem, is we need to reject that idea and instead recognize that you are entitled to happiness. You are entitled to inner peace. You are created by an act of love, and it is natural and normal for you to experience spirit safety and trust. You are worth it. And so it comes back to your power to use your mind to choose the better way by believing you're worth it. This is profoundly deep. I think this is a key, is to believe in your own worth. Say one more thing. If you can't immediately believe in your own worth, then believe in the worth of innocent little children. Some people find like a 3-year-old little child who's just innocent and playful, very easy to open their heart and treasure that, believe in their worth, and then realize that if it's true of them, it's true of you, it's true of us all.
You are a mirror of truth in which God himself shines in perfect light. Recognizing our inherent connection to the divine and acknowledging our true selves allows us to release the grip of the ego and transform our lives.
I think I got that sentence right, David.
Very right.
So, all right, well, I promise you, I will get the mirrors out again in the future. We're going to let this one go by for right now. But your mind is like a mirror. Everything that's happened to you in your life, you've written on there, on the mirror of your mind. And this course, yes, is intended to erase the content of your mind so that the light of truth could shine onto your mind and not have any of past doubts and judgments cloud your perception. Susie?
I just want to say quickly, because you just brought up the children or the child. The other day I was sitting with my grandchildren and I was at the pool and I saw this little 3-year-old, just, being a 3-year-old, innocent. And I thought to myself, I used to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
We all used to be that way until causes and conditions and the world and whatever taught us differently. And then we started thinking with the thought system of the ego. And I was looking at the little girl thinking, She doesn't have that yet. How
Right.
wonderful. She's innocent and free and filled with love. And that's what we're intended to be. And it's just, it's really the truth. Nothing changes in her being except for the world around her and what she's taught, he or she or whoever. And it really is a beautiful thing to think we all were like that. We all had that innocence. So
So true. I find it's an entryway into innocence and reconnecting with one's own innocence, like I think you did. So section 5 was on the, David, you had a comment?
I do. Just one comment. There's a line in this section that I just love. It's 2 lines. It says, his mind still shines on you and must shine through you. Your ego cannot prevent him from shining on you, but it can prevent you from letting him shine through you. And I just think that's very impactful.
Yes. Let's see, the ego can, if you allow it, the ego can prevent the light from shining through you. Yeah, I think that's really powerful as well. Thank you for pointing that out. So the ego body illusion, let's see, I'm going to make a, wait a minute. What? All right. 821. Okay. So I'm going to make a choice to skip that and move on to the rewards for God. David?
Learning through rewards is more effective than learning through pain, because pain can never induce more than a temporary effect, while the rewards of God are recognized as eternal. Ego will not commit itself to the eternal and prefers distractions from questions of purpose.
Yeah, so this section is really about your sense of purpose in life. And there's actually an idea here that each of us has a decision of purpose. Let me express it in simple language. What do you want to do with yourself, with your life here on your remaining time here? What is your purpose? What is it that is so worthwhile that you would be willing to commit the remainder of your life to? The ego will not commit itself to anything that is lasting and purposeful. It prefers distractions from questions of purpose. So there's all that to overcome. So again, on a dichotomy, the ego would keep you away from a sense of purpose, whereas the Holy Spirit would guide you towards a higher purpose, a shared purpose that we all have. David?
The separated mind maintains separation by dissociating. It denies all natural impulses. If you are grateful to your brother, you are grateful to God for what he created. Through your gratitude, you come to know your brother, and one moment of real recognition makes everyone your brother, because each of them is of your Father.
And I didn't include, there's another line right after this that says, this will bring you as close to knowledge as perception can go. So I want to spend a moment here. And the course is brilliant in how it can lead us along from something that is so simple, but establishes a direction that when that simple thing is taken further, it leads to something incredibly profound. And the simple thing is to express gratitude and appreciation for another person. Susie was just recounting how she had done that at the pool with the 3-year-old. An appreciation, just a noticing of the value of another person. And so it can begin with being grateful to one. That process extends it to include everything, including others and God. So through your gratitude, it opens the door of your heart and soul to appreciation and understanding and welcoming of another person. And it says one moment of real recognition, to recognize and re-know again another individual makes everyone your brother, because each one of them is of your Father. And then it goes on to say that this process can take you all the way as far as perception can go, right up to, metaphorically, to the gates of heaven. As a metaphor, is the appreciation of your brothers. It's the opening of your heart and soul to allow yourself to feel identified with and united with them. It can take you all the way up to the final step. And then it's easy for God to take the final step for you. So an attitude of gratitude gratitude is an aspect of love. And if you're not practicing gratitude, why not? It's easy to do. I've noticed around in my community, I mean, within 10 miles, a lot of people that I just see at the supermarket or wherever, they just say, "You have a blessed day." It's a simple token of appreciation, and it's actually like a prayer. Blessings be upon you. It doesn't matter how you say it. It's the intention behind the words that matter. So you can say it in any language, or not even say it with words. You can say it just with a sparkle in your eyes. But it's a way of appreciating another person, and that opens your soul to a deeper appreciation, which can take you all the way to the gates of heaven. And then my favorite section, if I have to choose favorites, is it okay to judgmental to choose a favorite? Is the last section. There's a number of ideas that are introduced in this section. I thought we'd just go over them quickly.
Existence, being. Existence is a state where separation seems real, mere existence. Being is the recognition of total reality and its relationship to you, of your communication with everything that is real, including your real self. Specific versus abstract thought. Specific thought is concrete, sensory, separated in time and place. Abstract thought applies to everything, everyone, and forever. Divine abstraction is universal and eternal truth. It is always true. Direct communication is from God to you. This communication is perfectly abstract, and the mind was created to use this on behalf of being. Indirect communication is from God to Holy Spirit to you. Think of yourself as a consciousness capable of direct communication with the Creator, a very powerful receiving and sending channel. Association disassociation or dissociation. Our mind can associate with the ego or with spirit, but not at the same time. Similarly, mind can dissociate from spirit or from ego, but not at the same time. Withdrawal is a form of dissociation, while prayer is a form of association.
So actually, whether you realize it or not, every hour, every minute, your mind is either associating with the truth of your being, or it's not. It's either in touch and awake and aware of your true nature, love is your true nature, or it's forgotten it and disassociated. And guess what? If you forget your relationship to spirit, if you dissociate from spirit, your mind will then seek to attach itself to something. What will it attach itself to? The easiest thing available, which is the ego's mindset. It's kind of all that accumulated stuff that the 3-year-old hasn't acquired yet, but that we as adults acquired over years of, quote, learning and propaganda and experience and whatnot. So the mind is constantly doing in one of these phases here. And as we learned earlier, it's easy to embrace the Holy Spirit. It is not a matter of concentration. It's more a matter of believing you're worth it, that this is worthwhile, that this is meaningful and important. And so it's can be learned. It definitely requires practice. It's beyond intellectual explanations. You have to live it and experience it. And once you do, the rewards in how you feel, in the sense of your mind being stable and consistent and at peace, the internal conflict starts to subside and it feels good. The rewards will fall in love with the rewards. For that is what will provide you a trustworthy direction. So there's so much more to be said about chapter 4, including one of my favorite topics is the various forms of soul communication. We've gone over this in class. I'm sure we'll mention it again in other contexts. But time has come to that time in our session where we need to wrap up. So thank you all. I hope this was helpful. This is a lot in one night. And so we will be picking up with chapter 5. By the way, chapter 5 is still a foundational topic prior to beginning the lessons of the Holy Spirit in chapter 6. So we are elaborating on the framework that the course is based on. It's the foundation. A solid foundation is necessary in order to understand how to apply the teachings that will come in subsequent chapters. And so your review of these topics and your studying of them is sure to pay dividends. David, thank you for reading. Thank you all for your comments and for your interest in these things. This is the path to healing. I've not found anything as potent and reliable as A Course in Miracles. And so I consider it a privilege to be here in this time with you and sharing this together. Thank you. I honor the spirit within you. Namaste.
Thank you, Jonica. Thank you.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Namaste.
We really have to wait
you,
till
Jonica.
Saturday, Jonica.
Read my mind.
Well, you know, we can
We
work
have no
on that.
private thoughts.
We can work on that.
Good.